One councillor in front of you. This will be recorded for the councillor that is not available here today. You have 10 minutes. How you elect to use that 10 minutes is your call, but it includes question time for councillor.
Thank you.
You can hear me all right?
Yep, you can hear me.
Fine, thank you.
Excellent. First of all, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to councillors for basically what I want to do today is just emphasise a little bit of the submission that we put in. Some of it's just a change in potentially a change in emphasis rather than asking for a significant change in the budgeting expectations, and just an awareness of some of the issues that we're dealing with. So thank you for accommodating with the Zoom meeting. I've had another LTP meeting this morning down at Porirua, so I'm sort of all over the region at the moment, so thank you for that. Yeah, just relating to the submission that we put in is just having an awareness of the implementation responsibilities for the NPS and having understandings of Te Mano OTY, while a lot of the responsibilities will fall on the regional council. It is certainly something which the district councils need to be aware of, support, collaborate, and partner up with. So it's just more of an awareness statement that Fish and Game are obviously aware of those responsibilities as well. Just relating to the wetland restoration aspect, it's really positive that a lot of the funding from central government and the Horizons region has focused on riparian planting and certainly some of the wastewater treatment plants. But just relating to the riparian planting, is that going to be enough long term? A lot of the scientific literature would suggest 8 to 10 metres of riparian planting is probably the general requirements, and it's pretty clear that a lot of the riparian management has been to exclude stock and maybe 1 or 2 metres, so it's probably not going to go to the fullest extent of the best management practice. It's a good management practice, but we probably haven't got best management practice per se, and that's the reality of managing the landscape the way that for a reasonable operation. Now, what I'm sort of basically asking is for the district council to be aware of wetland restoration within the catchments and rural catchments, and quite often there's areas which are either in small gullies or when you look at the elevations that there's opportunities to restore wetlands. And that might not be open water, so it could be just putting in, allowing the regrowth of existing plants there. So what that can do is nutrient stripping. It can also help slow down the flood pulse, and also it's a good sediment trap for sediment which gets into the water, which is particularly relevant for the Rangatiki River. So what I'll be doing is encouraging that the district council work in with the regional council and other parties as opportunities arise, and partner up to get the best result for the water bodies. Now, one responsibility which is probably a bit more in your court would be the existing stormwater management, and that's basically of the existing systems. We do notice pulses of nutrients and contaminants coming through the stormwater on any sort of urban area, and that gets into the river, certainly with a reasonable pulse of rainwater. What we'd be requesting is that just probably more emphasis on detecting and improving the existing stormwater system to reduce infiltration from wastewater where people have hooked up to the wrong pipes or have done that intentionally. So that's certainly something which is, I know it's a problem that's long-term management situation, but I think it should have a higher priority for as a continual management aspect. It tends to get a lower priority, and just give that a bit more emphasis would be appreciated. Also, potentially there's more innovative ways to deal with the stormwater pulses. I know in some regions, and they would have rainwater collection on houses, so that the pulse isn't so prevalent when you have a decent downpour, and that causes basically a lot of nutrients and sediment to go down in that first, probably about 80% in that first downpour after a dry spell. So it's something which is that reduces erosion of any of the areas. And so there's certainly, they call it sensitive urban design, but it's putting like swales around, which is grass, quite long grass around areas where there's collection points and things like that. So it can be incorporated into new areas, but it's you can also retrofit it without major cost, and over a 10-year period, it's sort of something that can be done as good practice. And the last aspect is just relating to supporting any catchment groups. And I know there's one or two that are in your district which have done some really good work, and some which are getting off the ground, and one's getting off the ground, and if the district council supports that, and I know the regional council will be keen to support that, those activities from those groups, and always be aware of the additional funding that's available. I mean, there was a pulse of funds that came through with the central government, literally hundreds of millions of dollars for projects around to improve waterways and etc. And it's just something to be absolutely putting your hand up for those funds to and have ideas all ready to go for those applications. So it's that's the basis of the submission. There's nothing particularly critical. Probably just a request for a change of emphasis in some of the stormwater management, but and just having awareness of other things which are going to be probably need to be done, which is beyond the most obvious simple ones to do. So that's my oral submission finished.
Okay. Well, are you happy to take some questions from councillors?
Absolutely, yep.
Questions from councillors? Councillor Gordon, Councillor Dalgety, and myself, Councillor Gordon.
Okay, Phil, you mentioned community groups in the environmental space. They're kind of the flavour of the month with reservoirs and water reserves and waterways. Would you consider allowing your staff to step into that space and share their knowledge, and even become a co-partner or a co-investor in that space?
Absolutely, that's something we're more than happy to put effort and resources into those positive aspects. I've got experience of many years on doing different river enhancements, and we've got staff who are extremely skilled in that. It's just having an awareness of like Roger Dalrymple was setting one up, just knowing when the meetings are, and being partnering up with those other agencies and individuals, and it's certainly something we're keen to do.
Thank you. Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just interested in terms of wetland restoration. What do you see the role of district council versus regional council?
I'd probably see the regional council taking the lead in a systematic overview of a sub-catchment, so that they'd have the resources to undertake LiDAR analysis, which is basically showing you the elevations within the sub-catchment, showing gullies and depressions and things like that. But it's something which would be positive from the district councillors to say that, hey, wetlands are probably a good option for these functions, and be promoting it rather than being a silent voice. So if the regional council are promoting it, then if the district council gets behind it, then it's singing from the same song sheet, and it's promoting a very good management practice long term. There's 3 or 4 major studies I've seen, work programs I've seen from overseas, where they've basically done catchments probably the same size as the Rangitikei, catchment where they've worked out the amount of nutrient stripping that each type of wetland would produce. So there's some wetlands which are constructed, which are basically gravel, and 80% of the denitrification comes through the gravel rather than the plants. And it won't have too much wildlife benefit, but it certainly has benefit for the system. And over in Australia, that they work it out for what's getting in from the sugar industry into the what's into the Great Barrier Reef, so that they'll have what carbon credits you can get out of wetlands to promote the development of those, etc. So it can be a very coordinated and beneficial way of looking at things, rather than at the moment we're struggling to assist farmers with money and advice. We're doing that with a number of farmers each year, probably about 20 farmers, with advice and funding about 3 or 4, but it needs a little bit of a boost and a positive promotion.
Thank you very much. That actually answers my question. Well, thank you very much for your submission. We will come back to you with a response.
And thank you for your time. Thank you.
The last submission we have for the day, Malcolm, if you'd like to take the seat in the far end. The hot seat, yeah. So Malcolm, your submission is on page 137 of our documentation council. You can take it that we will look at it. You have 10 minutes to use, if that includes question time, and you are being recorded because we have one councillor not here, so that they can listen into that recording in terms of deliberation. Time is yours.
I previously submitted a meeting in Taihape, but I don't think it was the 10-year plan. It must have been a shorter version or something, and nothing really came out of it. But my problem is I've got a neighbour with a bird scarer that I would say is not a responsible user of it. We had a major problem back in 2010, and it nearly went to the Environment Court. It wasn't going to stand up there. Further to that, in recent times, he has been reduced the amount of use of the bird scarer to a couple of hours in the morning, an hour around lunchtime, and then a couple of hours at the end of the day. It goes off every quarter of an hour with 2 bangs. Now, his use of it, 5:15 in the morning it starts. Would people in town put up with that? We're used to living in the country where you have aeroplanes doing top dressing and they start early and so on. But 5:15 in the morning it starts. Has a couple of hours in the morning, then he probably thinks I'm in for lunch about 11:30 to 12:30 because it goes off again then. And then at the end of the day, it will start at 8:30 and it will go till 10 o'clock. Well, quite a bit of that is after it's dark. I think the council ought to have some controls on the time that you're allowed to use this, because I know people in town wouldn't accept it at 5:15 in the morning or at 10 o'clock at night. We found the previous your legislation wasn't going to stand up in the Environment Court. Apparently the bang didn't last for 10 seconds, so that wasn't going to be held up. But anyway, my main concern now, he's been used it a lot less in recent times, but I don't think he needs to start it as early or go as late. And I think the council ought to have some regulation on that.
Are you happy to take questions?
Yeah, yes, I'll take this.
A couple of questions of clarification. I do know obviously of your situation. So what you're seeking is a change to the district plan rules and the way in which sound is measured within those rules. Is that correct?
That would be good, yes.
Can you explain to me a little bit about why your neighbour uses a bird scarer per se?
Well, it's usually when he's put in crops or new grass or whatever, but there's almost no one else around uses one for that purpose. It's just something, in my opinion, he's hooked on wanting to use, and I don't think it can be justified, a lot of the use he does with it. If he is a person that if he knows he's annoying someone around him, and that encourages him to use whatever is annoying.
Okay, so it doesn't have a specialist horticultural crop that
No,
it's used for a
no, just normal stock feed or grain crops or whatever. And yeah. But when we first got the place there, 2005, from then on until about 2011, he used it a lot more frequently, and it was never up near his house. It was always down near our place. And that's why I got onto the council back then to check it out, and we got nowhere on that because your regulations wouldn't stand up.
Yeah, I understand. Questions from councillors? I suspect I've covered some of the questions.
You've answered mine. Thank you.
Look, the way this works is council will deliberate. It will ask questions around how what process could be used to address your concerns and whether the concerns are valid enough for us to seek change. We will then come back to you and update you around. Thank you for the time. We understand the frustration that you may have been under.
It's been a lot more reasonable in recent years. My wife's prepared to ignore it because it doesn't, in the past, it would go at say 5-minute intervals the whole day. It just went day after day continuously. So a couple of hours in the morning, a little bit at lunch and a couple at night, it's not so bad. But I don't see why I should, I'm awake, but at 5:15, I don't want to listen to that. And at 10 o'clock at night, we're watching the TV, it's been dark for an hour and the thing's still going off.
Supplementary question from me. If we would look at changes within the district plan so that a bird scarer could not be used during the hours of darkness, would that be of assistance to you?
Yeah, well, the morning in the summer, 5:15, it's actually probably light at that stage or pretty close. So it would deal to the end of the day, but it probably isn't going to deal to the start of the day. I think you need to have it say it can't be used till an hour after daylight or an hour before dark or 6 a.m. in the morning and 8 p.m. at night or something.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we understand the situation. A question from you, Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, Malcolm, in your knowledge, are there national regulations that restrict the use of noise with and its proximity to a house or a residence?
No, I'm not aware of that, Angus.
Okay.
When this first came an issue, I noticed Horizons had some noise pollution regulations, so I got onto them, and theirs only relate to along the shore. And I was told I had to go to the district council. So from 2010, you people brought the gear and monitored it. But before, you've got to get on with your neighbours. So before I got onto the council about the noise, and they said, well, the neighbours, person relevant's got to be told. And I said, well, can you bring your gear and monitor it first to see whether we've got an argument or not? And you were allowed, what was it, 45 decibels at night and 50 during the day, or I forget what it was, but this was up at 80 decibels. So we certainly had an argument.
Thank you, Malcolm, for taking the time, and we will come back to you.
On that piece of paper, I also put in another submission, but not relating to that. That is my main thing. But just looking at your little handout, you put in how the rate increases for Taihape residential, Marton residential, Bulls residential, rural, commercial, and then was it infrastructure or something? Yeah. I spoke to somebody at council, but if you look at the percentage increase in all of those, the last one's getting off scot-free. I know the chap I spoke to said you've increased the rate to 1.5 or something. Well, I think you need to increase it further because they are, I think the other ones vary from 4 3/4% increase through, and infrastructure or whatever it was 2.75%.
Wow.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Malcolm.
Malcolm.
Councillors, that brings us to the end of submissions today, unless I've made a horrible error somewhere in the system. Thank you for your time. The Chief Executive and I will now need to go on. We've got a Zoom call now on 3 waters that we'll probably take. So excuse us for departing in a reasonably quick time frame.